Right. Some people can feel a little smoked out for a minute. But we got 2 windows popped open, so it should be okay. So like I mentioned, a lot of people come in and out of this space because we rent it out, and different photographers will come in, or just people to run their events. So I think it's always just a pleasant experience when you come back to the space to smudge it and kind of becomes your own again. Sage is like super potent. Like this produces like a lot of smoke. And then I'll just put it out when I'm done. A little bit of water. Can't do any like direct content, but.
Do you smudge anything else besides sage?
I really love copal. Like this is amazing, and it really reminds me a lot of like my childhood. Like I said, I'm not religious, but like when I was younger, we used to go to church occasionally, not like super seriously, and when I would be back home in Lebanon. And this is what they burned there. And when I was in Mexico, they have amazing copal. So I went to this really amazing store, and she said like, burn this kind, which is like very solid copal. It's not like an incense stick. It's like dense. And I started using it, and I love it. This feels like it purifies you. But I can light it and you can see if you feel any different than the sage. If you're open to it. I think it's not too smoky still. Actually, let's do this one. This will take a little bit longer to burn.
But you prefer the sage?
I know, I think I love the copal the most. This really, really speaks to me. It's also like tamer. You're gonna notice the sage is very strong. It's kind of intrusive, if that makes sense. That's how it feels for me. This will take a little bit more time to get popping.
Do you smudge before you paint?
Sometimes I do, yeah. I always like to smudge before I get tattooed. That feels really symbolic. Copal is interesting. I don't know if I would know the full history, but I definitely know that they grow a lot of it in Mexico, and they're pretty like proud of it. And they also use it for like the churches there. Obviously, you know, like in Mexico, you know, religion means a lot to them. But I don't know, for me it's just like nostalgic because they used to burn it back home. So when I smell it, it's an overwhelming feeling of, you know, remembering being maybe in a beautiful, beautiful church where the ceilings are massive and you just feel expansive. So we don't have to take it all around. We can just like leave it here with us for a bit. We just won't, actually maybe I'll pop it in here so we don't have any fires. Let's leave it down here next to this one. And we smudged. So my name is Rachelle, and you're in my studio / living space right now. And as you can probably already see, there's artwork everywhere. I specialize in doing really large scale abstract art. Usually very chaotic. And sometimes I do like nude figurative, like this one over here. I often won't do faces. I'm kind of really just drawn to like bodies. Especially like female bodies, I think are very entrancing. So I do a lot of that. But not a lot of elements where you can see the identity of the person. No face, usually no hands, no feet. It's just body stuff. And other than that, I use a lot of like psychedelic colors. There's a piece in the bathroom I wanted to show you. Maybe we could start there. So we also have a light going that kind of adds to it. I don't know if it picks up well, but this has a lot of actually I can pop the light on too for half a second so you can see it. Yeah, it actually has a lot of psychedelic colors already in it. and it's called Dream My Love. And I painted this piece about maybe like about 8 or 9 months now. And it's really special to me because I remember very specifically turning a leaf, and this piece had a lot to do with that. I was sort of putting something behind me, and when I painted this, I was really manifesting a lot of things that I wanted to delve into and where I wanted to go and what I wanted to experience. So as soon as I finished this piece and it came to an end, I felt very released into that new reality. So yeah, it represents a lot for me. I think it allowed me to dream a lot bigger than I was prior to painting it. And I've noticed that the really sentimental pieces always stick around the longest. I don't know why. Sometimes I think it's just the artist not being ready to let go. I really do. Because some pieces it's like a week, 2 weeks, a month or two, like maximum. And then something very, very sentimental, it'll just stay until you feel really ready to kind of like release it. And at one point I didn't even want to sell it. So I've kind of gone back and forth. So it's still here for now. And it moves around a lot. It was upstairs, now it's down here. So this is not my piece. This is just a piece that I liked. And for the most part, it's really a large scale art. This was done pretty recently, and it has a lot of texture, as you can see, which is something I really like to play with. It's also like a little bit different. I use some colors I don't usually dip into, like the purple isn't a color that I play with a lot. Red I also don't play with a lot, so that's kind of more unique. I really gravitate towards blues, green, like ocean tones. I love the ocean. But yeah, this piece, it's a little bit, it's meant to mirror each other in a way. Obviously the two pieces, I can really feel the smoke now. I'm like, wow, it's smoking here. I'll turn that off in a second. It's really meant to have some similarities between the two pieces of the diptych, but also like a lot of variance. And yeah, this also just represented kind of like, the aesthetic of it is like, it feels like terrain. It's very textured. There's just a lot going on for the eye to see, but it's also very chaotic. There's different strokes, blotting, a lot of like smudging of the colors. And yeah, this piece is actually, sometimes if I'm painting and a song will come on and I feel very moved by it and it speaks to me in that moment, I'll often use like a part of that to name the piece. So this one is called Algo que yo no puedo explicar, which means like that which can't be explained. And so I can't explain it more than that. So I'm gonna turn off the inset before we get completely smoked out. We don't want that. I'm just gonna place that on the top, kill the oxygen. Yeah. And we have this large piece, which is a little bit dark, but some elements are lit up in the top corner there. This is a really large size. It's probably one of my favorite sizes to paint on. But it's also really hard to move around. Like most cars will not fit this size. But this one is called Your Bronze Soul and Green Eyes. And in a lot of ways, it's dedicated to my partner. He is a massive support when I'm creating and when I'm painting. I'm a very like chaotic painter. I'm not very structured. So oftentimes he'll help me with the structured elements, whether it's like organizing some colors, or if I have a little bit of one color and I want to use it and I'm like, oh, I can't get it, he'll just cut it open, make things a little bit easier so I can flow. So yeah, this piece is largely dedicated to him, which not a lot of the art pieces are. A lot of times they're more reflective of my own personal journey, but yeah, this one is for him, and I really like it. And I didn't like it when I first finished it, which happens sometimes. I'll finish it and I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit frustrated. I don't know if this is finished. But I'll always wait one day, go to sleep, wake up, and then I felt like, okay, I'm compelled by this. I really enjoy it. So yeah, what else? What other pieces? That is not mine, but I really love that piece. It's like an apple. It kind of looks like a serpent. So I got it from like a thrift shop, and I really, really love it. I'm gonna be sad to part with it, but I don't know, it gives me like Adam and Eve vibes or something. And the person who painted it, they painted it like back in 2002, so it's got some time on it. So yeah, I'm kind of a little sad to see it go. A lot of the stuff in here I'm selling, like obviously I sell my art, but we furnished a lot of the studio space here, and I'm leaving in a few weeks, so we're selling a lot of the stuff that you see here, including this little apple piece.
What about this one?
This guy, yeah. This is really quite actually different. I don't know if it's hard to see, but I don't usually use very pastel-y colors, like especially compared to the piece that we just looked at. So this is like pretty different. It actually made me feel out of my comfort zone when I was painting it quite a bit. It's called Mirror Soul, and there's a bit of like a crack going through it, that kind of blackish line. And again, I guess it's like it's a mood I'm in right now, because I recently painted this one. There's meant to be an element of like this kind of mirrors each other, but not really. It's also kind of flipped. I don't know if that's coming through. So all the dark blues and the little dark earthy greens are replicated on the opposite corner. And yeah, this piece actually just was a lot about challenging myself using white, which I don't often use as well, and picking up on some more pastel-y colors just to see how to interact with them. And I also feel like it's more of a contemporary piece. Like a lot of my other art is psychedelic, and this I'm like, I could picture this in North Van somewhere. Like some of the other stuff I'm like, it's more funky. I could picture somebody who's, you know, a creator, a musician or something, having more psychedelic pieces. But yeah, this guy, yeah, this is called The Seagulls Will Show Me the Way. I would say it's really up to interpretation, but it makes me feel like an aerial view of the ocean, and I love the ocean. You can find pieces of the ocean in almost all my pieces. Yeah, and then I kind of put a little bit of like a compass that has waves inside to signify how the ocean kind of always shows me the way. I really tend to follow the ocean. I really like to always live near an ocean and go to it as often as I can. It's one of the purest feelings that I have in my life, and it feels so insanely healthy, and it also just it revitalizes me. I always feel reborn. Like if I go, especially if it's like a cold ocean, I love the cold oceans here. If I dip once, I feel amazing. I dip twice, like I'm like born again. So yeah, my mom is really attached to this piece. I don't think I'm gonna be able to sell it. I just talked to her on the phone today, and she's like, it hasn't sold yet, right? I was like, no, not yet. And she's like, listen, I will take that one. And she'll try to buy my pieces occasionally. I'm like, Mom, if you like it, just keep it. I'm not gonna sell it to you. So I think that might end up at her place, but we will see. So this piece down here is not finished.
Okay, so it's not finished.
Yeah. So interestingly, there's a story with that one, the bottom piece. I held a few events, and they were for like communal art expression, so coming together and painting together. And it was of course about the art, but a lot of it was just learning to connect with others, learning to release, like if somebody paints over something you painted, learning to feel confident to portray what you want to portray onto the canvas and find your flow. So the idea is that it was 3 different events I held, so there's 3 different layers. And eventually I'm gonna cover it with something and leave small elements of what was left behind. And like a lot of texture will be there because it's got a lot of paint at this point on it. And then the piece at the top is finished, I think. It's finished, but I might want to add something to it. That's why it's sitting in the back corner here, not in the front. It's kind of like, yeah. I'm not sure if it needs more, that kind of feel.
How do you become creative and then stay creative, I guess?
It's a really good question. It's a solid question. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind might be a bit of a strange answer, but, and it might be challenging as it's not accessible to everybody, but having supportive people in your life to fuel your creativity, I think is what's really worked for me. Sometimes I think, like I theorize, if my partner didn't really care if I finished a piece or didn't really care to fall in love with the piece or admire the piece, would I feel still desire to keep continuing? Because we live in the same space, and as much as my art is my own, sometimes it really does feel like it's bred out of the house. Like as I mentioned, I paint a lot where I live. So I think having the support and the love of the people around you, as soon as I'm finished a piece, oh, send a photo or let me look at it. Even if it's like really late at night and he's already in bed, he will get up to come look at it. Like that feels like extremely instrumental. Like that level of support and someone kind of like building you up in that way, it feels like such a safe space to create. And it also feels like a place of fire, of electricity. Like there's constantly this feeling of, yes, we have day-to-day life, there's things that need to get done, but never losing playfulness. So I think that's really massive to me, like being able to tap into playfulness, whether it's through yourself, whether it's through other people, or a combination of both would be ideal. Just holding on to that playfulness, like getting messy is also a way that I find creativity to be powerful. It's different for everybody, of course, but if I had to be very strategic and very organized and clean when I created, I don't think I'd ever create a single piece. I wouldn't feel compelled to, but knowing that if I get paint on the floor, it doesn't matter. Knowing that if I splash some paint and it gets on my clothes, when all of that goes out the window, I'm just focused on creating. So it allows me to feel like I can completely succumb to the feeling of creation. I don't care if anything gets messy. Like nothing is more important than what I'm doing at that time. So yeah, that was, I guess, sort of dipping into a couple different things, but I think that's super important. How do I not burn out? I definitely take breaks sometimes. I will create for condensed period of times, and if I'm not feeling the desire to produce artwork, I just let myself not. Like I don't think anybody puts the pressure for me to consistently, be pouring out artwork. It only comes from myself. So if I need a month, 2 months, 3 months, like I'm totally fine to take that time. And I always feel like I get to return with a new kind of lens. Okay, now I want to create a different collection. So I tend to not let myself get frustrated. If I notice that I'm getting frustrated or I'm not feeling the spark of creativity, I just let myself take a break for however long I need to. And I also have other creative interests to help balance it out. Like I think I mentioned, I really love doing henna, and that's like new for me. And that's very different because it's very like geometrical. It's very like small, intricate lines. I'm working on a very small circumference versus when I'm painting on a massive canvas. So kind of use that to balance me out, and it works really well. What other burnout could there be? I mean, kind of like I think I mentioned, there are some colors I don't use massively. So that actually works to my advantage sometimes, because when I do kind of go outside of maybe what I feel usually drawn to, it's really beneficial. It feels like I'm opening up a whole new world. I'm like, red. Like I still feel like I haven't discovered red. Like I very minimally use it. Like it's very cautious. So if I start to use a lot of red or a lot of purple, I'm like completely invigorated. I'm like, I'm doing something completely different. I don't know how to blend this color. And I'm also self-taught. So I think like a lot of people, like I've had a few art classes, like that's something that I explored when I was younger, but I don't, like I'm not invested in understanding the technical of how colors work, if that makes sense. Like I have a lot of artist friends, like they know exactly what happens if you mix that shade of orange with this shade of yellow, for example. I still don't. That's not something that it's always playful, it's always fun. Like, of course I know now if I mix certain colors because I've done it so many times, but there's still some colors I'm like, what's gonna happen if I add a little yellow to that? I don't know, we'll see, kind of feeling. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question. There's definitely several reasons, but I think like the really big reason would be that when I started getting into like figurative drawing, it was at a time in my life where I was like exploring my bisexuality, and which for me meant like exploring more with women. And so I was just super fascinated by their bodies and letting myself just like be doused with that. So when I first started, that's just where my fixation was. It was about the curves, like the juiciness of it all. So that's what I wanted to be replicating when I was, if I was drawing like a memory or I was projecting a fantasy, like it didn't matter. That's where my eyes would focus, and that's what I wanted to reproduce. But the second reason is that it's also very difficult to draw faces. I found like this is too frustrating, and I think it goes back to that symmetrical thing. Like I think we talked about that a little bit. Like not a big fan of symmetry, and like I think with faces, if you get the symmetry even a tiny bit off, like it just looks really jacked up. So I found it just easier to focus on the part that I was the most interested in, and I kind of enjoyed that when you don't have a face, there's not an identity. It's more just like you're purely enjoying the body as an art form, and you're not seeing the face or the part that makes it, you know, look like a certain person. There's no identity attached. It's just the body as an art form. So yeah, that's kind of what felt really good.